Welcome to Partners and Pathways podcast, navigating HR together. Welcome to another episode of Partners and Pathways podcast, your podcast where we navigate HR together. And today we will be talking about something that is very interesting and very close to my heart, even though it tends to get misunderstood, and that is performance management. Performance management process typically is a cycle. And usually when we speak about it, people assume that we're talking about performance appraisal. It is part of the cycle, but it is not the main thing. So we want to look at it as a whole. We want to talk about it. We want to be able to answer questions around how do we improve that entire process. And for us to be able to do this, we would look at how do we make it less compliance driven? How do we make it less reactionary? How do we make it less about ticking the box and make it interactive and seeing it as an avenue for staff as well as the organization to grow? And what role does HR play in the performance management process? Because a lot of the time it is seen typically as a 100% HR thing that HR drives from start to finish, but that is not usually the case. So we want to really get to understand this. Why would I want to speak about performance management? It is because your life in an organization is usually defined by 3 stages. One is recruitment or selection when you come in, and then the second is your exit. The one that really matters is the period that you spend in between. And in between, what happens is that your performance, what you achieve, is being checked and reviewed all the time. So that is why it's really important that we have this conversation to say, how do we make this process more enjoyable? How do we make this process more satisfactory? And how do we get people involved? So not just HR people, but line managers and employees as well. So that is why this topic is particularly close to my heart. I, of course, cannot talk about it alone. I do not have all the expertise. So I have Cynthia Eneh joining us today virtually, and she will be doing justice to this topic. And I'm so excited to have her. Cynthia, thank you so much for making time to be here to join us. And so I'll let you introduce yourself and then we can start.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's my pleasure to be here today to discuss about performance management. So just a brief introduction. I'm Cynthia. I'm a HR professional. In the last 10 years, I've been working for the humanitarian and development sector strictly in human resources. So it's been a long journey so far, but it's been very interesting. There's been growth, starting as an intern and getting to a very large level where you have to do global recruitment and work on an international space. So it's been a good career path for me, and I've enjoyed so far being in HR.
So I'm curious, and because you and I didn't have this conversation prior, did you always want to be in HR?
No, actually, my first degree is in sociology. Sociology has to do with understanding, the society and how it works. And I just thought of, let me try human resources, try to, study, humans, people in the organization. So understanding society and understanding the people in the society just gives you that, understanding of the entire thing. It makes it easier to deal with people once you understand how the society functions. Also understand how people in the society are functioning. So I just felt like, it'd be good to just, since I have, this understanding of the society, it's good to have understanding of, people and managing people in the society as well. So
yeah, that sounds great, and I'm always excited to hear people's story and how they started and how the journey has been, and I'm so excited to hear yours as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. So we will get right into it. And of course, we started from the very, very beginning. What is performance management? What is it?
So everybody has a definition of performance management. You know what it entails, what's the process. But I think in recent times there's been a shift. As you said in your introduction, it's not just about tracking work and evaluation. At its core these days, there's a shift of creating an enabling environment where people and the organization are able to do their best at the workplace and able to thrive, to get better at the work that they do. So it entails a lot of things in terms of defining objectives, ensuring that you have learning objectives aside your work objectives. How are you going to grow in terms of your personal career growth? Getting feedback and also giving feedback, having coaches and mentors along the way that help you get better at what you do. And it entails a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it's something that both the employee and the organization thrive together in ensuring that everyone is happy at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I love how you said both the employee and the organization thrive together, and I think that is critical in performance management. That's the entire essence of it. Is about growth, not just for the individual but for the organization as well. Absolutely fabulous. And so if we have that understanding, you would assume that we should care, right? We should be more invested in this process. However, that is not really the case. Is it only about measuring productivity? Are there other things, other benefits of this performance management process?
No. It's about growth. It's about learning. It's about improving the culture, because you get feedback, you're improving yourself. It's also something that at the end of the day, it has to be embedded in the organizational culture. It has to be something that you do freely, not as a check box at the end of the year. Okay, I have to sit down and have this conversation. Because people would feel energized knowing that, oh, I'm very good at this and I'm getting feedback. I'd want to do more and perform better on the feedback I'm getting. And also, if someone is giving me areas of weaknesses, I'm able to improve. And that way, I get better in both my strengths as well as my weaknesses.
Yes, and it also projects the organization, right? How the organization grows, because the organization is then able to see the contribution you're making to its strategy as well. So you're growing as a person, but you're also contributing and creating impact for the organization that you're working for. So absolutely necessary. All right, so the fight in performance management process is always who takes charge of the process, who is responsible, who really is responsible for this process.
So at the end of the day, personally, I feel like it's everybody's responsibility. It's not just HR, it's not just the employees, it's not just the managers. So everybody has their fair share of ownership in the process for it to succeed. You can't say, oh, it's only when HR reminds me that it's time for a review or to do check-ins with my line manager that I have to do it. We see it as something, as a personal growth for you, a learning objective. You know that you and your line manager have to schedule this. You need to do it because you want to get the feedback, you want to learn, you want to grow, you want to improve. So at the end of the day, it's everybody's responsibility. It's not just on one person, but we also have all our specific roles to play in ensuring that these objectives are met.
Do you want to sort of highlight some of the responsibilities for each person, or each position?
Okay. Yeah. So for HR, I feel like we are the champions of performance management. We need to ensure that it's embedded in the organizational culture. So have to put it and ensure that it's a culture thing. People accept and understand what the process is. Then also in terms of systems, I've seen over time where you see HRS systems you use for performance management are just so very bureaucratic. And the fact that we just talk about performance management and the system is not user-friendly, it's not easy to navigate, nobody wants to go there. So it's really important that as HR, we ensure that we implement tools that are easy to use, user-friendly. We train team members on how to navigate through these systems. It makes things very easy. Also, for the employees, I would say that they need to understand, we need to train them to understand how to use this so that they are able to use it and also understand the benefits. It's not a checkbox. It's not just, we just get to rate you to say you've done, it's like a judgment sometimes, or you didn't do well here, you did better in this angle or in this area, I mean to say. But it's, I mean, once they understand, I'm getting feedback, I'm learning, I'm growing, there's something in for me, there's always interest, and there's always that, interest in making sure that they do it. Also for line managers, I also feel like, I mean, over time, I think people try to ignore the fact that, I'll give a good example to say that you employ someone and Sarah's reporting to me, and next thing you bring 2, 3, 4 people. I'm just new to this role. I've never managed people. So what I'm trying to say is really important that, we as HR as well, train line managers, train managers. Just don't say you have team members, you have supervisory responsibility over 3 people. However, we're not training them on how to be coaches, how to give constructive feedback, how to receive feedback, how to actually have those difficult conversations and give people feedback. It's really something that we should look at, because you just see people sometimes they're surprised to say, oh, my lemon just said this, and you're like, okay, this is not the right way to, as in, put this out there to an employee. Don't make them like saddened or feel judged or not being happy with the way they were spoken to. So it's really important that we train line managers. Line managers need to be empowered in the way that they give feedback and actually appraise people, appraise their employees. Yeah.
One of the key stakeholders I feel in this whole process is leadership. When leadership drives this process, you see the difference in the approach. And I can remember one of my bosses who would first make sure that he has done appraisal for his team. And so when we're socializing, for example, during an appraisal process, he will say, I've completed this process for every member of my team. You don't have an excuse. So, leadership drives that. And when you start talking about culture as well, culture lies on the table of the leadership of the organization. So it's very critical that we have their buy-in, we have them understand the purpose of performance management, and that they are able to lead this process and make sure it's happening. And I absolutely agree with you about line managers and how we are able to support them to do the right thing. I can say for a fact, as somebody who has line managed people, that it's so easy to give feedback, but to receive feedback, that is a whole nother ball game. When you have to honestly listen to somebody talk about you, especially describe the things that you do that they're not happy about in terms of being in the workspace. So I think it's very, very critical that we're able to engage line managers to understand the importance of receiving feedback, not just giving. Be willing to receive as well. Okay, so I understand the different roles and everything, and understand that each person has their responsibility. However, it is, in my experience, I've noticed that it's so difficult to get line managers to see this as an organic process or as a core responsibility. It is usually seen as an add-on, like something extra, like you're doing the organization a favor by appraising your staff or by engaging in this process. How do we break that barrier? Because I do feel like sometimes you have those conversations, but as an HR person, like you're not getting through. How do you break that barrier with line managers especially?
So I think it also has to do with changing the mindset, because the mindset, as you said, is very like a checkbox. I have to do this and move on with it. They need to understand that there is more. This is about growth. This is about learning. This is about performing better, knowing what is wrong, knowing what is right, knowing areas of weaknesses, areas of strengths, and knowing how to perform better. So, I mean, we as HR need to be champions. Line managers need to understand that, it's not just an evaluation. It's not just, you're doing this and there's more to it. The organization as a whole is going to gain. The employee as a whole would have, for instance, learning objectives. I need a particular skill that I need to acquire, so they know they need to do this. At the end of the day, it makes work better. I mean, you're improving yourself, work gets easier. If I have a skill gap, for instance, and it has been identified, and I've gone to take maybe a particular course on that skill gap, and I come back to the office, you'll see that, Cynthia has improved on this particular area. At the end of the day, there's also always a ripple effect in the organization as well. Maybe enhances efficiency in the way I'm performing. My KPIs have improved. So they need to understand that it's not just, a checkbox. There are benefits of ensuring that, employees happy. They are also happy because in the performance management process, it's not just about, giving feedback. These days, we're open to actually giving feedback to the line managers. So if you give me feedback as Cynthia, I also give you feedback as Sarah, as my line manager, to tell you, okay, so I think you can do well in this area and that area. Also looking at, feedback in terms of a 360-degree feedback. You get feedback from peers. That way, it's broadened. You get to see what your peers are saying, what people you work with in other departments, even internal, external stakeholders, what they're saying about you and, how to improve it. That way, I feel like when line managers get feedback, everybody is on the edge to say, okay, this is the feedback from me. I want to improve on a particular area. And also when we talk about, line managers as coaches, it's also something they are learning. Because as I said, it's not everybody that is actually equipped to, manage people. But once we have in place that, training to ensure that they're able to coach people, listen actively, give constructive feedback, they also gain from it. So that way, I feel like they'll be on the edge, they'll be more involved. They'll be interested in the whole process to ensure that, everyone is happy at the end of the day. They're happy, they understand the process and they know what is happening. The employee has the right feedback. They don't feel blindsided. There's learning, there's growth, and at the end of the day, the organization is also, equally thriving.
Yes, you raise certain interesting points that I just want to sort of pick on. And when you say the employee is not blindsided, especially during like an evaluation process, it is typically a result of the sort of communication that has been happening prior, right? So do you want to talk more about that? How can I, for example, as a line manager, make sure that nothing I say to my line report is coming to them as a shock?
Yes, so on that is something that happens frequently when, especially with performance management, you do performance management once a year or maybe twice a year. Performance management has to be continuous. That's something that is very key. The feedback has to keep coming. Not at the end of the year, you give me feedback and say, oh, in January you didn't do this, you're supposed to do this by this time. And we're in December having these conversations. So if feedback is continuous, I'm not blindsided, I'm not surprised at the end of the year when you're telling me all the things I have not done. However, if we had organized like maybe bi-weekly check-ins and monthly or quarterly check-ins, that way you're giving me the feedback, improving. If there's a gap, I'm actually addressing that gap, and you'd see at the end of the year, you'd see there's been growth, because where I was in January is not where I am in December. Because you've given me continuous feedback, I've worked on it, and you're also helping me to improve. It's not just about me, you're helping coach me to get better in what I'm doing. So that's where, all of this, comes from. And when I'm talking about being blindsided or being surprised during the appraisal period, that totally eliminates it, because, then you would not have such surprises at the end of the year when the appraisal is done once. But in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is like, this feedback must be continuous. There has to be a lot of communication, collaboration, give feedback, set up, formal and even informal check-ins to ensure that, everybody's on the same page and nobody's surprised at the end of the year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's really important that you continue to maintain that communication, maintain that the tempo of telling the person what they're doing, and also listening to how you are able to support line reports, for example. So I really like that. However, we live in a very real world, right? Where what you described is the very ideal world, but things don't always go that way, as we have come to realize in this our field. How can I, for example, handle a line manager who is just not engaged, who just doesn't get it? That performance management, you have to do the planning phase where you're agreeing on objectives. You have to do the monitoring phase, which is what you just described, and then you have to do the evaluation, because some line managers, they don't care about this process. How do I manage such a person? And this person is the one who at the end of the day will say whether I'm doing my job or not. How do I manage such a person?
Very interesting question, and quite the difficult one. So, I mean, managing people is a very difficult thing. I mean, as a HR professional, it's just something that, is something we have to deal with. But you meet different types of people in the workplace, but I mean, there are no types of people that cannot improve or cannot change. So for such a manager, I would say it's really important that, you sit down with them and, ensure that you discuss with them and elaborate the importance of performance management. This is not just something you just do on a checkbox, as a checkbox, but it's something that you need to understand that it affects a lot of people. Like there's something about, someone's career is on the line, something about an employee's personal growth is there. Also, the organization, the impact on the organization. I mean, if an employee is disengaged or not happy, it also affects the person's work, which in turn affects the organization as a whole. So we need to ensure that, the line manager actually understands the essence of performance management, and it's embedded in the culture. So this isn't about, culture as a whole. If, performance management is embedded in the culture, it's important, it's part of the organization's process. That way, I don't think it's something they can, back out of. It's something they have to be involved. They also have to be champions. We also have to make line managers champions of the process, because they have a key role to play in performance management. So that way, they're involved, they're engaged, they're also, encouraging their employees to ensure that, the entire process is completed. They understand what it entails. It's not just a checkbox, not just an evaluation. There's growth, there's learning, there's development, there's feedback from, both parties. You're giving me feedback, I'm giving you feedback. I feel like, that way, I think difficult people will be able to, have a rethink and just, understand that, they have ownership and they have to be involved in the process and make it work at the end of the day.
It's important to also highlight the fact that there are consequences. So you do everything to get the person to understand the process, the culture, and all of that. But they need to also recognize that is a system, and if you go against the system, there are consequences, just to sort of, add that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But that is from like a HR perspective, right? So what if I have a line manager who just will not go through this process rightly with me? How do I deal with such a person? I'm a staff, I'm an employee. What do I do?
Yeah. So I think it's something you need to flag with human resources to say your line manager is not complying, ensuring that they give you, feedback or regular check-ins. And HR is able to, escalate this, talk to the line manager, or even talk to the line manager's line manager and see, someone above. We need to go to that extra step, because as I said earlier, the consequences, this is something that, is part of our process, our policy, that this has to be done. It's part of our culture as an organization, because it has been embedded in our organizational culture. It's really important that, we ensure that, this employee speaks to HR. HR, takes the next step of ensuring that they speak to this line manager, explain things to them. And if, there's still no improvement, they can now flag it to a higher authority, probably, maybe a head of office or the particular person's line manager. So you can take it from there to ensure that they comply, because it's not a case of you don't want to do. This is something you have to do at the end of the day.
Exactly. You have to absolutely do it. And because it's just because it's important, not because anybody wants to put you on edge. It's because it is important. Right. Thank you so much. So now you have mentioned culture quite a bit in the conversation. And it then begs the question, are there environments that typically enhance this process, and are there those that deter the process?
Yes, definitely. Yes. So, environments, if you just think about, the psychological mindset of an environment where you're not free to just speak out and talk about stuff. You're not able to complain about something, those kind of, toxic workplaces where, you're just a receiver. You don't contribute in ensuring that, in terms of teamwork, you just take whatever they give you. So such environments, you can't thrive in such an environment. Or where you have complex systems for performance management. You have no idea what is happening. They put this system in place. HR has not explained how the system works. It's just so complex that it's not user-friendly. But every time you think of performance management, trust me, this happens a lot. You just be like, I don't want to go there. You just keep procrastinating, like, I'll do my review, I'll do my check-in month later, I'll do my check-in month later. And at the end of the day, you find out that 6 months has gone, like you've done nothing because the system is complex. So it's not good. So it's really important to have, a system, a workplace where people are free to speak out. They can ask questions, they can receive, constructive feedback. They can also give feedback, and there are no biases also in terms of the feedback. You don't just sit down and say, because it happens, we're like, oh, the people in program always have, all these trainings they are going for. We in corporate services, nothing for us. Like, what's the criteria for approving trainings for them? They are going here, they're going there, they're improving, they are growing. But when it comes to us in corporate services, we don't have any. This is just an example. I'm just saying it happens typically, but an example. So like biases like that, we need to identify the biases that exist and fix them. Like what can be done in terms of, it's really good to have, an open-ended structured review system in terms of how do you appraise someone, how do you give someone feedback. It's not just done on a vague platform or just people just give feedback very vaguely, like it's not constructive, it's not detailed. You don't know in detail what the areas of improvement are, what the weaknesses are, or particular examples of of a time when I did something or where I can better improve. It's really important to ensure that the environment is friendly. People are free to speak. The system is also user-friendly in terms of the system and the tools we use for performance management. And lastly, we identify, we fix these biases that exist here and there.
Yeah. And it's performance management is often tied to reward sometimes as well. So it's good to make sure you're doing it well and you're getting it right. The other thing is around, and you did mention it earlier about development, which is very critical. How do you then create like succession plans and your talent pool? It all comes out of this amazing process, and that's why it's really is important that we take it seriously. All right. Thank you so much. All right, so I want us to shift focus now and talk about everybody's favorite child, performance appraisal. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like an appraisal was a waste of time? And what did you do?
Appraisal was a waste of time.
Yeah, have you ever been in that situation?
Personally, I have not. However, being in HR, you hear lots of stories every time someone comes in and talks about how they feel like. So I can give an example of someone who felt like the appraisal was a waste of time because of, I think it also relates to an example I gave earlier and what we've been talking about. So if there are no regular check-ins, if there's no continuous feedback, if you feel like, it's not just an evaluation, you feel like you're just being judged. You're just saying you're not good at this and that is it. And no one's actually encouraging you to do better or take trainings. How can you pay me? Can I shadow someone? Can I improve? Nothing. So I have a colleague that had complained sometime and saying, we just wasted 1 year. Having that appraisal conversation at the end of the calendar year, and very surprised at things that came up, like what's happening here? Why am I hearing this? It was very funny, and she just felt like it was a waste of time. What was the essence of this whole thing? And it still boils down to the fact that there was a poor system in place. There was no continuous feedback, regular check-ins. We just feel surprised and blindsided that why did I schedule this call? Why did I come into this appraisal conversation prepared to talk about how I'm going to grow, what my learning objectives are, my areas of strengths and weaknesses? Nothing was highlighted. You just say things I did not do, or it's also related to when we talk about training managers to be coaches, giving constructive feedback, having those conversations. Like, if they can't do it, then there's a problem. So we need to tackle all of this so that we don't have a situation like this where people just feel like there's nothing in for me. You're just going to sit down, talk to me, blindside me, gaslight me, make me feel judged. Like, I don't want to sit down here and have this conversation. So it's a total waste of my time. And that way, there's always a ripple effect. Employees like that are not engaged. They're not committed. They just feel like, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm not going to improve, because at the end of the day, you guys are going to judge me. So we need to change that mindset.
And I think, Cynthia, one of the other things is the flip side of what you described. The flip side of what you described, where you see somebody's performance appraisal is like good, perfect, excellent, you're amazing, you're the best thing that has happened to this unit. And then the line manager comes and meets you and says, I need this person out of my team, they're not performing. And then you open the appraisal and boom, you see that it's excellent, good, you're the best. Have you encountered such a situation?
Yes, I think I've encountered such a situation, and the good thing about that situation was that the line managers review excellent. The narrative was very good, feedback, XYZ ABC perfect, A+, staff. However, we also did like a 360-degree feedback to say, what are your team members saying about you? So we had to review that to say, okay, is this line manager actually saying the truth? Because from a review of the 360 feedback we got, everything was aligned. It's not like, okay, your line manager is saying you're excellent, the team members are saying you're not. So this person was an all-rounder. So the feedback from their peers and their other team members was also same. So we have to sit the line manager and say, where is this coming from?
One of the things that I think is necessary to highlight is the importance of that whole culture, where you create an environment where you can have those checks and balances, so that it's not just one-sided. Because sometimes you hear people say, oh, the organization sides with the line manager. I think it's very important that people know that conflicts may arise, but then the organization has a system to address the conflict in such a manner that is very transparent and devoid of biases, because biases, they're very key in performance management, and they pop up all the time. And we will talk about biases a little bit later. So how can we then make, especially the appraisal process, the whole evaluating people, how can we make it more enjoyable? How can we make it more something that people look forward to? And I'll give you an example with 2 line managers that I've had. One would I don't know how she used to do it, but she used to document things that I had done that I had forgotten about. And during performance appraisal, she'd be like, oh, you also did this, you also did it, you also did. And it used to just fill my heart with joy, whenever she did that. And the other one, he would it was very, very practical, and I really enjoyed going through appraisal processes with him, where he would be like, okay, what have you done? What are the evidences? And you have to give that. It put me on my toes. It helped me desire to do more, or make sure at least whatever I had set out to do as objectives, that I was meeting them, because I know I need to come up with evidence. So it's not just putting a narrative, it is what is the evidence of that narrative. And he really shifted my perspective about performance management. And he is not even a HR person, but then he was able to do that and impact how I viewed it. Cynthia, I think it has been an amazing conversation. So as we wind down, as we come to a close, I really want us to spend some time talking about biases, because I feel that it is important that we highlight how to deal with biases. And what I'll just do is try to explain some of the biases that we see. We have things around recency bias, where you appraise somebody based on how they performed their most recent performance. So maybe you do well in the last couple of months, and then that's the basis. So we see that happening. We have what we also call contrast bias, where you are consistently comparing people and you're measuring them against others within the team. So it's not really about their effort, it is about how they measure up to their own peers. Then you have the halo and the horn effect, where halo is I've done something really well, and or rather I'm good at something, and because of that you assume that I'm good at everything, or you appraise everything else because of that one thing that I'm good at. And the opposite of it is horn effect, where I'm bad at one thing. Let's say I come to the office late, and you just want everybody to come to the office at 7:00. And because I come at the normal resumption time, which is 8:00, you hold it against me, and then it clouds your judgment about everything else that I do. You also have people who are just lenient when it comes to appraisal. Everybody, they can't just, I'll say, grow a spine and call a spade and give people what they deserve. They just want everybody to convene. Everybody's doing well, everybody's doing fine. Meanwhile, as a team, they're not performing. We also have, primacy error, bias, where I'm judged or I'm appraised based on something I've done very early on, probably in my career or in the year, that the line manager just holds on to and just will not let go. So we do have a wide range of biases. We have gender bias, which also plays out within the workspace and all of that. And it is important that we address these biases. It is important that they do not play a significant role when it comes to appraisals. However, we cannot live like we're in a society without bias, because everybody has biases. How then can line managers handle biases? Because everybody has a bias. How can we handle it to make sure we're having a free, transparent, honest, and objective evaluation process?
Okay, that's a very good one. I think first step I would say, you've already identified the various types of bias that exist. But I think the first thing would be awareness. These line managers need to be aware, because you can be doing something but you're not even aware that is a form of bias, or actually this is bias. So awareness is the first step. It's something that is really critical for them to know. What type of bias exists, even in terms of their tone, their language, how they talk, in terms of the review process. So it's really important that they are aware that bias exists, and these are the various forms of biases that could come up. Also, I also feel like once they are aware of this bias, they need to once this exists and you need to spot it, then try to fix it. In terms of fixing it, you need to maybe change your tone or how you address someone in terms of stereotypes or the languages you use to address employees. There needs to be fairness and equity. The way you address team member A should be the same way you address team member B. There also needs to be structure in terms of the criteria for reviewing someone. If you're going to have an open-ended competency-based way of appraising, or if it's something we don't usually do, numerical like ratings, if it's the same thing you're going to do for team member A, you should do that for B. So it should be consistent, across board, across teams. That way you don't feel like, why is this person appraised in this way with a different tool, a different structure? And my own appraisal is different. And we work in the same organization, we work for the same team. So it's really, once all these biases are there, people don't feel like, there's fairness, there's equity, there's transparency in the whole process, and they don't trust it. Because even at the end of the day, I don't think we really highlighted the essence of trust in the process. If there's no trust, people don't believe in the process. So it's really important that, line managers, we don't just see them as, coaches, as, people that give feedback. Also, we need to ensure that they are trusted partners in the process. If I don't trust you, I'm not able to take your feedback and work on it. So it's really important that, that is highlighted. Also, I think I did mention about, also ensuring that in all of this process, team members are involved of the bias. It can just be between me and my line manager. I'm spotting and identifying. The line manager is spotting and identifying. You can also do a feedback to team members and ask, what did you feel? Do you feel bias exists? You can do questionnaires just to check in and see what their feedback is. That way, with feedback, you're able to improve on systems, know where areas of weaknesses are and try to improve on them. What are areas of strengths and try to keep doing what you're doing well. So it's really important that first things first, there's awareness. You are aware of what the issue is. You're able to spot it and you're able to fix it. There's fairness, there's transparency along the way. Everybody is carried along and everyone is happy at the end of the day.
All right. Thank you so much. I don't think there is a better way to end this conversation today than with what you have said. I'm really, really grateful. Thank you for making out time to speak with us. I believe that everybody has just been blessed and they have learned a lot from you on this podcast. So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day. And I'm sure we'll come calling again soon. So hope we can speak soon. But thank you for making our time to speak with us.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye for now. Bye.
All right. Thank you so much for being a part of this episode of the podcast. Please do not forget to like, share, comment, and follow us on all our social media platforms. I'll see you again next time with another interesting episode and another amazing guest. Until then, take care and stay safe.